And welcome to this episode of the Good Citizen Podcast. Great to be on today with a friend, Sean Teis, and leads Life Factors Ministry focused in on the issue of fatherlessness. We're going to dive into why that's so important in our society. But Sean, welcome to the podcast.
It's great to be on with you today, Josh.
And so Sean has traveled for a number of years with his family, spoken in over 200 churches throughout the United States on this concept of kind of hope for the fatherless in our society. They have evangelized, discipled folks, and they are now launching single mom ministries, opportunities for churches and families, grandparents that are tasked with raising kids. And I think anybody that has been in ministry for any time at all knows where the American family unit is. Certainly that nuclear family has disintegrated in many ways, and people are picking up the pieces. And I think Sean's right on the front lines of that. So, Sean, if you would just dive in, anything I missed in your bio, and kind of what you're doing there with the ministry.
Yeah, our ministry is the Life Factors Ministries, like you said. We actually just recently we changed the name over to God is My Dad. We still operate as Life Factors, but God is My Dad's our ministry that we launched in 2017 underneath Life Factors, and it's turned kind of taken over the whole ministry. And so we've been just helping individuals, fatherless families, single moms, grandparents raising grandkids. We help them understand that God will be their father, and we help the parents and the grandparents understand that God will help your children. You don't have to go on this path of thinking your kids are going to be defeated. You don't have to be defeated as a single mom or a grandparent raising grandkids. You can overcome this. And then we give different resources and help, and we connect them to local churches. That's what we focus on. And so you covered it, but that's our burden and passion is to help fatherless families all over this nation and around the world, really.
Yeah. Will you share a recent success story? I imagine you have a number of them, but just something recently God was working, and you saw God at work in your ministry.
Well, one of the things was we were in Las Vegas. We were living out there. We moved out there at the end of 2021, and we started working with Liberty Baptist Church out there. They actually brought us out there. They asked us to come and do some at-risk ministry with some at-risk communities and different ministry they had going, but it was kind of dying. And so they wanted us to come out and kind of revive some of that stuff with the Las Vegas Metro Police Department and stuff like that. So we went out there, partnered with them, and we were doing that ministry. But then as soon as we got there, we met this single mom. There was a Christian school teacher in the school there, and we just saw how she was just tired, burnout. She just needed some encouragement and help. And so we talked to her about, we prayed about it right away. We talked to her about maybe launching a single mom ministry with her. And we had never done anything like this before. It was a brand new concept. And so we talked to her about it. There was another Christian school teacher that was a single mom there. And then there was some single moms in the church or different people associated with that. Maybe we had a grandma that was raising her grandkids and different things like that. So what we did was we put it out on Facebook. We did an advertisement. I talked to my cousin Matt Teis about it and just said, hey, you want to start a single mom ministry? He was all for it. We were ready to go. And so we just basically put it on Facebook, launched it, said we're starting this ministry. And through that, we connected with over 30 single moms from throughout Las Vegas that were able to start coming to this group. And we averaged between 8 to 17 single moms a week. Sometimes we're down to 5. You just never know with single moms, their schedule and the things they face. But we were with them for several months. We were out there, and we started that in January. We left in August of the following year. So we're about 20 months with these ladies, and we saw tremendous things from that. We saw some of them connect to the church. We saw some of the kids get mentored, just different life transformation working through that. These moms every week were being evangelized and discipled through this group. It was during the time where they already had children's programming and they did the teen ministry and things like that at the church. And that was a success for us because we had never done anything like that before. It was a brand new concept. And then while we did that, while we were there, and this is all through God. This is all God guiding us. We're like, okay, we didn't even know what we were doing. We were kind of just kind of running and flying by the seat of our pants. My wife and I knew that we needed to take the curriculum we had, and we used this book that we started, that we wrote in, I think we released it in 2014. I called The Single Mom Journey. It's a book that I took my mom's stories, and my wife and I wrote it, and we shared that book for the 30 weeks with these ladies in Las Vegas. And then my wife and I decided we needed to take this and turn it into a video curriculum that churches around the country could use because we can't be everywhere teaching it. And so we took it, we recorded it with the videographer out there, Grace. She's amazing. And she helped us out. We got it on video, and then we put it out to churches and said, hey, would you start a single mom ministry? And we had about 10 churches, or about 8 to 10 churches, something like that. That was our first launch. And we had ones in Illinois, Indiana, Tennessee, different states around the country, Utah, I think Florida, different places. And they said, yeah, we'll launch one too. And so they launched Single Mom Ministries. And we saw amazing results. And so we also got to see, does it just work in Las Vegas in a big city format, or does it work in rural areas, rural America? And one of the groups was in Zionsville, Indiana. One of my friends from college, it's Mounts Run Baptist Church out in Zionsville. They're in between cornfields. I mean, they're like they're out in the country, and they had consistently for the last, I think, year and a half, had 10 single moms coming every Wednesday night. And when I say 10 single moms, I want you, the people listening to this, think about how many fatherless kids that is being impacted by that. That's, if they have one fatherless kid or two, that's 10 to 20 right there. And so we're not talking just 10 single moms. We're talking 20 to 30 people, if not more. And so that's what we're seeing. That's a success for us. And we're starting to launch those all over the country. We have about 20 single mom ministries with churches and ministries around the country right now. Our goal is to get one in every county of the United States, but that's our big push. We're still doing all the other parts of our ministry, spreading awareness, creating unique resources, speaking, partnering with local churches, but establishing local ministries is a big thing for us. We actually just launched 2 new ones in Pennsylvania, and we had 18 ladies come to those in the first 2 weeks. 18 ladies connecting to these single mom ministries, and then all their kids get to go to youth group, get to be part of the Awanas. Some of them were already part of the churches, but they get to have a place to belong now. But many of them were from outside the church, and now they're getting connected to the church. And so that's a win for us. That was a success thing for us, and we're just seeing how God's working with that. We're so excited about it.
Well, you're talking about the messiness of all this. I love to just call that kingdom entrepreneurship. Like you just see a problem, and we'll get further into your own story, what kind of led you into this path. But yeah, it's just kingdom entrepreneurship. And then listeners that have been with us for some time may have recognized the name Matt Teis, who's been on talking about serving God in Sin City. We just recently caught up with him this year. God's really doing some amazing things. I did tell him that I will know he has arrived when I fly into Las Vegas and his face is on the sphere. Like that's when I will be impressed. But no, I'm grateful for him and just for your family's overall kingdom impact, doing some amazing things there. So jumping into a topic like this, of course, just want to lay a little bit of groundwork. Certainly, we believe from Scripture that kids are going to do best when there's a mom and a dad in the home. That's just the way that God created it. Unfortunately, there are times, whether that's death. Certainly, there can be an abusive divorce. There can be divorce generally. Situations where specifically a mom is left caring for those kids. And my own ministry have known so many heroic single moms, basically carrying both sides of that, trying to just carry everything that they're doing. I was talking to a lady here recently, and I was just blown away. How in the world do you manage a job, 5 kids, getting them to school? Like I just, wow, it's a lot. But in conversations with those individuals, I still get the sense that that's not necessarily the way that they would want it. That they would welcome, that being a functional, healthy relationship. It's just not the case. And so we see that. We're grateful for that. And so I just wanted to lay, a little bit of groundwork there of kind of where I would see it. I'm sure your ministry sees it in a similar way. There's sin, there's brokenness in our world. Things don't always work out the way we want them to. And so how can the church jump in? Now, since this is the Good Citizen podcast, I wanted to dive into a little bit why from a society-wide level, and I'll tell you, this comes up all the time. One of the reasons I wanted to have you on, could you share just some of the recent stats on fatherlessness and how does the absence of a father in the home, again, not denigrating, single moms are doing amazing things, but it's just real data here. How does the absence of a father impact children?
Well, fatherlessness it's impacting children, but it's also affecting every single one of us in the United States of America. So as a citizen, and we're all seeing it. We're seeing it on the news. We're seeing it in our communities, in our families. It's all over the place. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services says that fatherless children are at a dramatically greater risk of drug and alcohol abuse, mental illness, suicide, poor educational performance, teen pregnancy, and criminality. And there's a lot of stuff there. Even notice there's mental illness in there. Mental illness, a lot of times we want to medicate children, and whenever they just need a loving, caring adult to tell them that they believe in them and they care about them. Sometimes they need medication. Sometimes there's a chemical imbalance. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying there's not, but sometimes these kids just need somebody to love them and care about them, and it'll take them, to a successful future. Some of the things that we see is crime. 85% of youth in prisons grew up in fatherless homes. 80% of rapists motivated with displaced anger come from fatherless homes. Even different topics such as 70% of youth in state operated institutions come from fatherless homes. We see even arson. 90% of arsonists, I'm sorry, adolescent repeat arsonists live with only their mother. And maybe you're thinking, well, why are all these things coming from, with crime and immorality and stuff like that? Well, dads provide with their children. They provide security for their daughters, security for the boys too, security for the
Mm.
daughters, and then they teach their boys how to respect themselves, respect society, respect women. And when you don't have those things happening in these kids' lives, and having that dad saying, "Hey, I believe in you. You can do better," as a for a girl, you're my little princess. I love you. You're beautiful. I care about you. When they don't have that, they try to find it other places. And so we're seeing with crime, with guys, we see that they're just going out with friends. They may get into a gang. A lot of times it's just friends. Sometimes it is a gang, bigger city format. But sometimes it's just some friends. They might get in trouble together and maybe burn a shed down. I don't know. Things like that.
Hmm.
And we're seeing this in every community. I had a pastor tell me one time when I first started this ministry, he's like, we don't have families like that in our city. And I completely disagree with him because I'm like, they are everywhere. If you add it all up, there's probably over 30 million fatherless kids right now in our country, with the ones that, they might not be statistically added because they're being raised by their grandparents, but the dad's kind of still there. There's all kinds of numbers that we're not seeing all the numbers together. Even homosexuality, the issue with homosexuality in our nation, it's a big issue today. And we're like, well, why is all this happening? And sometimes it comes from abuse. Sometimes it comes from neglect from the father. But there's a guy in California. His name was Dr. Joseph Nicolosi. He was a very well-known psychologist. His whole practice was helping homosexuals become heterosexual again. They'd go to him and say, I don't want to have these feelings. I don't know why I feel like this. Can you help me work through this? And he was quoted as saying, I've worked with thousands of homosexuals, thousands of them, thousands of homosexuals. I've never seen a homosexual who had a loving, respectful relationship with their father. Also, P.L. Adams, very well respected counselor, and J.R. Milner. They said boys who grew up in father-absent homes are more likely than those in father-present homes to have trouble establishing appropriate sexual and gender identity. Hear a lot about that today, don't we? And because mom and dad aren't in there, it's not that an institution of mom and dad. It's just that mom. And if you're a single mom listening to this, understand your kids don't have to go down this path. You get them plugged into a local church. You find mentors for them. You do your best to pour God into them through the scriptures, doing devotions with them. You'll help them succeed. But this is kids that don't have that hope. They don't have that relationship with God. They don't have that church. They don't have those family members that are Christians that care about them. They don't have that loving mother that wants to pour into them. And this is the path they're going down. Even issues such as teen pregnancy. We see that. It's a hot topic today, obviously, with abortion and everything. 71% of pregnant teenage girls come from fatherless homes. That should be alarming for us as ministry leaders, as pastors, because 71% of these girls that potentially could have an abortion are coming from a home without a dad. So how can we go to the root of the problem? We can minister to those girls differently. We need to look at look at how are we doing this? Revamp our ministry, and how can we minister to these girls and guys before they commit crime, before they go down of trying to pursue a relationship with a guy to find that security that the dad should provide? How can we help them so that they don't go down this path? Sometimes people try to tell us with our ministry too that this is just it comes from a certain economic background or a certain race, that this isn't in our neighborhood. It's everywhere. There was a study one time. It says a white teenage girl from an advantaged background is 5 times more likely to become a teen mother if she grows up in a single mother household than if she grows up in a household with both biological parents. That's a white teenage girl from an advantaged background because her dad wasn't there. 5 times more likely. They're not doing good in school either. In studies involving over 25,000 children using national representative data sets, children who lived with only one parent had lower grade point averages, lower college aspirations, poor attendance records, and higher dropout rates than students who lived with both parents. And as citizens, if they don't do good in school, they're going to rely a lot of times on your tax dollars. They're going to be causing problems in your community if they don't do good in school. And then the last one I'll share with you is suicide. 3 out of 4 teenage suicides occur in a household where a parent has been absent. And so we're seeing all these things. We see, issues with school shootings. We see with crime, so many different things coming. Many times, if you research them, they come from fatherless homes. And so what do we do about that? How do we help them? But that's what we're seeing in our nation right now. These are just some of the things, some of the areas that fatherlessness is affecting all of us as citizens.
Well, I'm sure the listeners, if you were unfamiliar with some of these stats, I think most people are generally aware of the crisis. But when I first heard you share some of these, I was just blown away. And also just thinking about how do you solve problems in a community? A lot of times we'll throw dollars at kind of symptoms, but then when you're asking kind of root cause, like what is causing some of this? And when you those stats of in the 80 percentile of those in prison, without a doubt, I mean, it seems to be a very obvious problem. However, you mentioned some of the societal pressures pushing back, and like why can't we talk about this? Because saying, "Hey, kids need a mom and a dad," is suddenly controversial in our society, and in our ministry, unapologetically believe that if we follow God's good design, if we follow the created order, we flourish. And this is one of those just root created order type issues, the natural family. And of course, that does push back on the concept of homosexuality. And I was fascinated by what you're sharing about what children perceive in a home when they don't see that mom and dad represented well. One last thought before we move on. Now, certainly, this is an encouragement, I think, for listeners. Like, oh, those absent dads, they're the problem. For all of those that listen that are a father or a father figure, there's a lot of pressure on the side. Oh, you don't matter. No big deal. You don't matter that much. Well, absolutely, and we need to prioritize that role. Because it's one thing to have an absent father, but you can be there physically, but still be absent spiritually, not leading, not pouring in emotionally. So that was another just conviction that I was listening to those stats again with just reemphasizing the importance of that role in our kids, grandkids' lives.
Well, that's
So
one of the things that.
Go ahead.
Just real quick, Josh. Can I add to that? That's one of the things that
Please.
we have when we speak at churches and places. One of the main things that people come up to us, they say, "I had a dad that was physically present, but he was not a good dad. I was basically fatherless." What they'll tell us, and what they're saying is, my dad was physically present, but he was mentally, emotionally, or spiritually absent from their life. And so we've seen a ton of people come to us over the last. We've been doing this ministry for over 16 years. We've seen a ton of people come to us and say, "I had a dad, but I felt fatherless growing up," and that's because they're not there. They're not present. They feel like, well, hey, I provide the supper, I provide a home, I provide their meals, I provide their clothes, I provide that stuff. I'm a provider, but that's it. And as a dad, I want to encourage all dads listening to this. We have to go further than that. I know we're tired. I know we're worn out by work and things like that, but we have to go further. We have, as dads, we have to do our best, because honestly, I've worked with a lot of kids, as a youth pastor and things like that, and I've seen a lot of kids where it was harder to work with the kids that the dad wasn't involved and he lived in their house than it was to work with the fatherless kids. Do you know what I mean? Because that dad's in their house and they're constantly being rejected. The dad doesn't want to do anything with them. He's constantly just rejecting them. He just works all the time. That's it. And so that's something that we've seen with our ministry. That's an epidemic as well. And that would take it into the 50 million. You know what I mean? It would take it way higher than what we're seeing now.
So definitely encouragement for us. And I think a lot of men struggle with kind of purpose in today's world. Well, being there, leading your kids well. I mean, that is kingdom work for sure. And I think we can help. And there's some jokes out there about the difference between Mother's Day and Father's Day. And this may sound like I'm complaining. I am not. It is, an interesting reflection about the value of motherhood versus the value of fatherhood in our society. And again, God says they're both important. A mother brings really unique things that are important, but so does the dad. We try to talk about a lot of topics on this podcast, but those stats show that there is a major issue here. So I imagine, some of the ones that would be apparent to me, at least for fatherlessness, would be the breakdown of the family structure, the breakdown of responsibility, where a woman becomes pregnant and the dad's gone. Certainly our culture of divorce, no fault divorces would certainly play into this. We've talked about also the acceptance of kind of family units that would be different than God's design. Are there any other factors you think that are playing into this epidemic of fatherlessness?
One of the things definitely is the fatherless make their kids fatherless. And so we're seeing
Mm.
these, these kids grow up without a dad, the boy or girl, and then they end up getting in a relationship. They end up making their kids fatherless that way. And so it's just kind of a domino effect, and it just continues on.
Mm.
And somebody's got to come into that kid's life and break that cycle and say, hey, you can succeed. This is how you do it different. Be pure, walk with God, get married before you know, have relations. You know what I mean? Like things like that, changing that path. But that's one of the things we see is that the fatherless make the fatherless oftentimes.
Wow. And yeah, so how do we step in and break that generational issue? So how did God lead you into this particular ministry? How do you equip you to speak into this space?
Yeah, I grew up fatherless. My dad left when I was about. My dad actually grew up fatherless, and so some of you the listeners know the name Teis. My dad was Rick Teis, and my David Teis is a pastor in Las Vegas. David Teis is my dad's little brother, and they both grew up in a fatherless home. My dad's dad died whenever he was 13 years old. David was 10 years old when our dad died, and my dad went down the path of becoming a statistic, and he went down of searching the world for trying to find peace in that, because it plagued him his entire life not having that dad from 13 on. And so he
Mm.
tried to find it hope through drugs and alcohol addiction. He tried to find it through women. He tried to find all kinds of relationships. He was married like 7 times, all these different issues. He tried to find that. My uncle David, he went down a path. He wasn't a perfect person, but he went down the path of finding hope through God. And so you see, if you know Liberty Baptist Church or any of those things out there, he's thriving and doing what God's called him to do, but he found his hope through God. And that's the difference you can see there. Well, my dad
Wow.
went down the path of destruction. When I was 9 months old, he came home in a drunken rage. He threw my mother and my brother and my sister out of our house, but he kept me, the little baby. And my mom was nervous because he had a past history of abuse. He had beat her up many times, and she didn't know what he was going to do to me. And so she got the cops to come. The cops showed up, and they demanded that my dad hand me over to them. Instead of gently handing me over, he took me and threw me across the room to the cops. And the cop caught me, thankfully. And the crazy thing is, I just met one of the cops that was there that night. I'm
Oh my
40 years
goodness.
old, but I just met this
Whoa.
cop. It was the craziest thing. I was kind of like
Oh,
blown
what a
away when
story.
I met somebody that was
Oh.
there whenever he was there. But it was really cool to meet him. But anyways, so my dad, after that happened, this was in central Pennsylvania. He packed up
Mm.
his things and went on a bus, like I think the next day, back to Las Vegas, and never came back. And so we started
Mm.
what I call the fatherless journey. And so we grew up fatherless. I was the youngest of 3. I had an older brother and older sister, and then my mom was a single mom. And so we had, my mom, thankfully, my mom had a cousin that was a bus captain that invited us to go to church, and he had her ride to church as well. And so not just us
Mm.
kids, but my mom, we went as a family on this bus to church from when I was a baby. And I got plugged into that local church. And then through that church, not just getting plugged into the church, I had people that intentionally became mentors to me and poured into my life. I got to go to the Christian school because of that. And so God just worked
Mm.
amazing things out, a miracle. Because I mean, honestly, I should have just been a statistic like my dad. I should have went down the same
Mm.
path. I shouldn't have gone to a Christian school. I shouldn't have been involved in the church, but it was all God. And God can do the same thing for anybody listening to this. He can transform your life or your children's life or the people you're working with. He can transform their life. And if you just be used by God, but that's what God did for me. And so I went down this path. I had this youth pastor that poured into my life, and I thought he was pretty cool. So I felt like God was leading me to be a youth pastor. I'm like, this is a pretty cool gig. You know what I mean? So let's go be a
Yeah.
youth pastor. I felt like that's what God wanted me to do. So at 15 years old, I surrendered to be to full-time ministry at a Gospel Light Youth Conference in North Carolina. Some of your listeners might
Okay.
be familiar
Yeah.
with that. Steve Robertson. And so I did, got down there, surrendered to be a youth pastor. Then I went to school when I was about 19. I went to Trinity Baptist College in Jacksonville, Florida, studied to be a pastor. And I graduated, and I thought I was going to go just be a pastor. I got my degree in pastoral theology. And then God led me to write a book for fatherless guys. And that changed my whole life. And so I wrote this book for
Mm.
fatherless guys. It took me a long time to get the stories out, wrote this book, and then it turned into a whole ministry. And this is back in
Wow.
2008. We launched Life Factors Ministries, trying to help people with different life factors that they face. And then God is My Dad came after that. But we started writing books. We wrote the book for fatherless guys, one for fatherless girls, one for single moms. We have children's books for fatherless children, for motherless children, for orphan and foster care children, just trying to create unique things that I wish I would have had growing up, or I wish that I
Mm.
would have had for my sister, my mom. And so just trying to do what we can to help these families. And that's why we do what we do.
It's such an incredible testimony, and what an amazing story of meeting the one of the police officers that was there, and like, thank you for having good hands. Like, don't drop that pass, please. What an incredible story. And it does make we think about the line that our greatest pain is sometimes our kind of greatest contribution to the kingdom, and having to live through that, but now being able to share that with others is a personal story, just so profound.
Mhm.
So how exactly, you've written the books, you've talked a little bit about creating the curriculum. How do you specifically equip churches? So if you were talking to a pastor, hey, how, I see this, I know I'm thinking of people in the congregation. How can my church help them? What does your ministry do? How do you come alongside a local church?
Well, we used to be kind of like old school evangelism. We bought an RV, we traveled around the country, and actually first started with just us providing our resources, our books and things like that. And then we
Mm.
started speaking, and we did a national tour called Hope for Fatherless American National Tour 2019, 2020, and 2021. And in middle of COVID, we did it. And so it was an interesting time. We were in, almost 200 churches, around 200 churches, something like that. And while we were doing that, we thought, how can we, um, how can we do more? Because 200 churches is great, but how can we get into the thousands of churches that are across the United States that could use this, the good churches that are preaching the gospel? How can we help them minister to the fatherless? And so we started
Mhm.
going digital. And that's where, obviously, 2017, we launched the God is My Dad mobile app that you can find in the Apple and Google Play Store. And fatherless families can go on there and they can create a free account and stuff like that. And there's all kinds of free content. But then we also have the back end of it where we have curriculum that churches can use to minister to single moms. We also have other content that we're going to be adding for the fathers. We have our books in there digitally, stuff like that. So they can take our books, they can work through it with 30 days or 30 weeks with a kid, and work through that with them. We also have our curriculum that we use for single moms to help them. And we're on a new kick where we're like, hey, if you reach that single mom, then she can go home and disciple her kids. Because one of the problems we're seeing with trying to connect fatherless kids to mentors is there's not enough mentors to do it. And you'll
Mm.
see that with Big Brothers Big Sisters. I've worked with them in the past. Over 10 years ago, I
Okay.
connected with them, and what I was trying to do is help them get connected to local churches so they could get Christian mentors with the kids that they have,
Mm.
because every Big Brothers Big Sisters has a waiting list of kids. And so
Mm.
it is great to provide mentors to kids, and if you can do that, if you're listening to this, you can do that. But there's so many times there's single moms are just like, I can't find anybody for my kids to mentor them on a regular basis. And so our thought is, okay, if we can disciple that single mom, then she can mentor her kids. Sure, sometimes there will be that manly influence. And through these single mom groups, we see men stepping up and they come to the quarterly activities, they're getting plugged into kids. But the single mom group becomes a catalyst for, let's reach the fatherless kids through the single mom. Let's disciple the single mom so that she can reach her kids, so that then relationships will start, stuff like that. So that's
Mm.
our biggest push now, is helping them. So what we offer is we provide training to the churches. We can help them get set up. It's basically starting a small group at your church for single moms, and through that, it's a weekly time. We recommend you meet through the school year. Sorry, excuse me. And so it's September through May, and that was when they meet. And so it's a time for them to to meet during the school year, because a lot of times with ministry, summertime, everything's just kind of gets crazy,
Mhm.
people disconnect and stuff like that. So it's September through May, around that time, whatever your church wants to do. And then they have access to our curriculum. So we have the single mom journey curriculum. It's 30 weeks of curriculum. We also have the how to parent well curriculum, so how it shows parents how to parent well as a single mom. That's a 14-week curriculum for churches to use. It's all video based. We all the handouts, you print them off and download them. And then also the next one is God is My Dad attributes. It's a new curriculum that we're just about to launch in our back end that churches can access. But God is My Dad attributes, we're really excited about this one because it teaches moms how to disciple their children about God being their heavenly Father, and it works through a different
Mm.
attribute every week about God. And so because their dad's not there, they learn about God filling that gap and helping them with the issues that they face. And so then also it has a weekly devotional that the moms can take home and work throughout the week with their kids. And so these are ways that we lead churches to help. We could come in and speak. We've done that. We've spoken in churches. We can help you as you want to speak about it. You can find statistics on our website, things like that. But to actually go deep and do something about the issue, go to the root of the problem, we want to encourage you to start a single mom group. That's our biggest focus right now, is helping them with that. We provide the curriculum and all that. And when they do that, they join our network, our God is My Dad network. And so on our website at godismydad.com, churches get listed on our map, and it shows fatherless families. Oh, there's this church in my city that cares about me, that has resources for me, and they want to connect to that church. So that's what we're trying to build right now, is a God is My Dad Church and Ministries network. And then through that, the churches get access to our single mom curriculum and all these different resources. And so it's kind of a win-win situation for everybody. They get families pushed to their church,
Yeah.
they get help and resources like that. So that's kind of how we focus on helping churches. Any churches that are interested in that, contact us. We'd love to help.
Yeah, and we'll certainly put links to the app and as well as the website. I encourage, if your church is thinking about this, this is plug and play type stuff. And I think for pastors, we're already overwhelmed. Maybe you have someone that has gone, has been a fatherless child, similar to your story, that might be energized to kind of lead this, and then you're mentoring them to mentor their kids, just helping the church be the church. Now, I was just reflecting some. I always try to go back to the scriptures. As I was thinking some about this, we use a lot of scripture, and we kind of generalize it as like orphans. But I'll read a couple of verses that just jumped out at me. Like we often talk about James 1:27, pure religion undefiled before God and the Father is this, to visit the fatherless and widows in their affliction. And so there's that actual description. There's also Psalm 68:5-6, a father of the fatherless and a judge of the widows is God in his holy habitation. So there's a lot of rich, scriptural emphasis on this that I think sometimes we kind of glance over, that is actually how God describes a child, and that's in, this is a position where the church can come around them and help them. So I just wanted to mention those passages. Now, I imagine you hit some pretty common roadblocks or obstacles. What are some things, if somebody's wanted to launch into this ministry, what should they expect?
Well, with launching the ministries, it's not that difficult. It's just convincing people that it's a need. And I think that's the hardest thing. And it's not as hard as, because I think the devil tries to confuse us as Christians, where we look at things and we're like, that's too complicated. But it's as simple as finding a loving, caring person in the church that would care for some lady in the church or a couple that would care for them, and then really finding a room in your church and inviting them out when you already have childcare and clicking play. And it's really as simple as that. Promoting it out to the community through Facebook and putting an event on your Facebook page, but it's really not that difficult. And that some of the obstacles are, I think, that it gets overly complicated. Well, how do we do this? How do we launch this? It's not that hard. And it's really not that hard. We just launched 2 in Pennsylvania, and we had 18 ladies show up. And so it's really not as difficult as we think it is. And we just kind of wanted to debunk that. With our ministry, getting people to focus on fatherlessness over the last 16 years has been difficult. Now that it's come out in the news, when Black Lives Matter and all that stuff started happening and people are seeing more things, they're more apt to be, oh yeah, I do need to focus on that. But honestly, for the first 10 years, it was really difficult to get a lot of churches to focus on the issue of fatherlessness, because they're thinking, well, we already have children's ministry. We already have a teen group. These kids need direct attention. They need some extra encouragement. I'm not saying you should neglect the other kids, but these kids in their situation, they have an off balance life. If you look at their life is off balance. Like on a scale, they don't have that dad in their life. The kids that have a mom and the dad, a lot of times their life's in balance. There's a lot more in balance than these other kids. And you as a church, you can bring a little more emphasis, a little more help to them. It's going to help bring their life back into balance, but you have to be intentional about it. And so helping people understand, you got to be intentional with some of these kids. That's been a battle, trying to get people involved in it. And then also not just putting a Band-Aid on it, not just talking about it one Sunday a month. And it's great to have a single mom oil change time. That's awesome. I love that. Those are great things. I'm not bashing that. Those are really good things to do. But if that's the only thing you do for single moms the entire year, I want to encourage you to do more. Do something else. Do something about discipleship and evangelize them, and not just changing their oil. Changing their oil is a great thing. It's a great thing to do, but doing more for them spiritually is something we want to challenge people with.
It sounds like you've been able to overcome this, but I could foresee a scenario where people put out, hey, we're having a kind of a single mom's ministry. And here you already have a single mom that's just completely overwhelmed with everything that's going on. But she's handling it. I mean, she's being that heroic single parent. And it's almost like you're saying, I'm not doing enough. And so now you're going to have this, like, where somebody might perceive that as like demeaning, but it sounds like what you're doing is just like putting this out there saying, hey, we see you and this is an offering to you. So have you been able to navigate like announcing this, leading it without like, we're not putting you down? How have you navigated that?
Yeah, we haven't had anybody that took it. It's no different than you starting a financial peace class. People,
Okay.
the single moms go into it, they know, just like if somebody going to a Dave Ramsey financial peace class, that they got to work on some of their financial stuff. You know what I mean? So it's single moms, they're coming at it like, hey, I'm excited that somebody's actually focused on this.
Okay.
And that, again,
That's
that was
awesome.
one of the things that we heard from single moms when we traveled, is they would tell us, I don't feel like I fit in my church. I don't fit into the singles group because it's for the younger single adults. I don't fit into the married couples group because obviously I'm not a married
Wow.
couple.
Yeah.
And so this is a place for them to belong. And that's what we've seen from these groups. So they just kind of come in, and we even get nervous when we launch them. We're like, are they going to show up or not? And they just pour into the room, and it's like, oh, okay. So they really want this community. And so they're looking for community. Now you might have some that are against it, but haven't heard anything like that.
Yeah. You're just offering it, and they're perceiving the need. Okay. Yeah, that's helpful to know. Just I'm thinking maybe a reaction a pastor might have. So you've received a lot of great, even national exposure as of late. Could you explain a little bit of that?
Yeah, we've been able to be on several different Christian networks. We were able to be on the Lauren Green Fox News show podcast with her. Through that, I got to go on speak at the National Religious Broadcasters event on a faith and fatherhood event. She was the moderator for it, and I got to be one of the panelists for that, the National Religious Broadcasters Convention this past February. And so we've been on the Christian television network. We've been on several of the I'm trying to think what their names are, but several of the different Christian networks. But we're talking about fatherlessness, sharing about God is my dad. We have multiple of them listed on godismydad.com. We have several of the interviews on there. You can go to our YouTube channel too. We share our God is my dad YouTube channel. We share the different interviews there. But God's opened up a lot of doors for us. It's all him. And but you're just getting connected to these different ministries and groups like Lauren Green from Fox News and different places. God's opened up several doors for us to spread awareness about it, but also to tell people about what we're doing to help people find God.
That's awesome. And I'm just so encouraged. And I think you read those stats, it is such a national issue, and yet we haven't focused on it. So I'm so glad that you're leading the charge on that, and that folks are listening in and paying attention. And so what's next? You have shared a little bit. You talked about God's attributes curriculum, but kind of how can we pray for you? What are you kind of dreaming about as you head into late 24 and into 25?
I'd love to see, our goal is to see one single mom group in every county of the United States. So that's a big goal for us.
That's a small thing. You'll get to
we have 20 right now. We're looking at 3,000 some. So just pray for us that we can get churches that want to do these. We just relaunched our website. We're merging God is my dad and Life Factors together. So just pray for that transition. We're trying to get all that merged. We would, trying to think of I'm speaking at a single mom event the end of September. So if you I don't know if this will be live before then, but if not, just pray that we'll continue to get opportunities. But at the end of September, I'm speaking at a single mom event in Georgia, and so excited about that. That opportunity is a single mom and sons event, and so different opportunities to speak at that God wants us to go to and speak and be used by Him. I have a new book that I'm working on that just pray that I can get that written for our ministry, and then we're also redoing all of our devotionals. So we have a lot of publishing stuff coming up that we're working on, redoing the covers, redoing a lot of the content inside them. The Fatherless Journey for girls, one for guys, and then also for single moms. And so several things. We have a ton of stuff in the works right now. So just pray for also, we're launching God is my dad Pennsylvania too. We're focused on our national ministry, but we're also doing God is my dad Pennsylvania, and really just having a local focus on PA and what we can do here. And it's going to be our hub, like Las Vegas was whenever God had us out there. But now Pennsylvania's going to be our hub where we can, it's like really a science lab trying different things out. Like our single mom group, we're going to try a new mentoring aspect of God is my dad for fatherless kids. And so several things in the works, but just pray for us in those things.
Well, very similar strategy to our ministry here in Indiana. We kind of see that as like our local, it's not a church, but like local opportunity to make these things work. And so when we go and speak places. Now, well, I've had this idea. I've never tried it myself, but you should try. So it's that laboratory where you can make it work. And we've covered a lot of different things, but I was thinking about grandparents and how I meet so many folks that are raising their grandkids. And so I didn't want to kind of finish up until we'd had maybe at least a moment. Anything that you would encourage them with, or encourage church leaders to think about for those grandparents that are raising grandkids?
Well, that's part of my story that I didn't share. My grandparents helped raise me. I moved in with my grandparents in second grade, and they were just a blessing to my life. I mean, they poured into me. My grandfather loved me, but if they would have had some more assistance from the local church, I think they could have done even better. And so I just encourage local churches to, if you see a grandparent that's raising their grandkids, just ask them, hey, how can we help? Even if you just ask them, how can we pray for you? Is there something I could pray about, or what's going on in your life? And then going back to them the next week and letting them know that you prayed for them and ask them how it went. And so just kind of caring about the different things they're facing, fulfilling some of the needs that they have that the church can provide, if there's like a meal or something like that. But just any ways you find, hey, this resource is available in the community, pouring into them through that. Grandparents raising grandkids are heroes oftentimes. Sometimes they're not good people, but a lot of times they're good people that just want to help their grandkids overcome what they face. And I'm so thankful for the ones I had. And if you're a grandparent raising grandkids right now, keep going. I know that the devil's going to try to tell you that you're not good enough, that you're not doing a good job, that somebody could do it better. I know you're tired, but just keep going for your grandkids. You will not regret it. My grandma, she poured into me. My grandfather passed away when I was about 12 years old. And then my grandma just kept going. My mom and my brother and my sister lived in a different place. And my gran was just amazing. She just poured into my life. That's why we focus on part of our ministry on grandparents and grandkids. We'll probably eventually launch some curriculum for that type of ministry, for churches to launch grandparent raising grandkids ministry. But that's a big thing. We also have videos on our website too, godismydad.com. You can find, or actually you can find them on our app. You can download them from our mobile app, but there's videos on there to encourage grandparents raising grandkids. They're also on our YouTube channel as well, but just different videos from the perspective of a fatherless child being raised by his grandparents. That's how the videos, that the angle of that. And so just to encourage grandparents on their journey. But yeah, I have a passion to help grandparents raising grandkids.
I just wanted to get that in there as well. And in talking to many of them, raising kids is really hard work. And like you've done it, and then you're back doing it, as you hit, 60s or 70s. And it's just the energy level of caring for a 5-year-old. And, and I think for the single mom as well, even, simple things of bringing over dinner or helping watch kids for something. I mean, there's just so many practical ways to be the body of Christ there. So, look forward to seeing that curriculum as well. Well, Sean, if you had a billboard in which you could put a message to the Big C Gospel Preaching Church in the United States, what would you put on it?
Well, can I have two?
Yes. I need to frame that.
Yeah.
You can have a series if you want.
Yeah.
Okay.
One's directed to the fatherless on this side of the street, and it's God is my dad. And then finding hope and security in him. And you can overcome your journey, basically like that. But saying God is my dad, because that phrase, what we found, people just resonate with it. We get occasionally like, I think it's disrespectful to call God as your dad. Well, Abba Father's daddy father. But anyways, we're not going to get into an argument. But God is my dad. We rarely ever get an argument about that, because people just love the saying God is my dad. Then the other one is for churches, start a single mom group and they will come. The old, build it and they will come. So build it and they will come. Start a single mom group and they will come. Maybe you're thinking, how do I reach fatherless families? Start a single mom ministry and they will come.
That's so good. Well, and we think about how profound that is, that God is our Father. And you even think about being a father, trying to raise kids. I mean, not always adequate. You don't know exactly what to do or what to say. And that's just encouragement for all of us, and so important for those that don't have a father in the home. So I'm just encouraged. You have such a unique ministry, and as you've shown through the stats, such a needed ministry. And so I'm so grateful to have some time to talk with you. We'll look forward to seeing how God's going to use this, and we'll have the links in the show notes for those that are interested in starting this in their local church. So thanks again.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Josh. I really enjoyed it.